Mindfulness is a great practice for trauma-affected students to build their self-regulation, but it's also something that they can use as a tool to avoid escalation or become more regulated. You can also use mindfulness with students as a tool if you're talking about hot topic items like social injustice, racism, things that really get people heated up. And when students are opinionated about certain stances, they might get agitated, and mindfulness can really be used to help students work through that agitation in a way that makes it productive, and the conversation can continue on. But for trauma affected youth in particular, we want to make sure that if mindfulness is used as a classroom management tool, it's something that's accessible, it's something that they understand how to use it, how to access it, how to ask for it, and then they understand what's going to happen if they misuse it. And I'm going to really emphasize that never becomes punitive, and how to work around any misuse of a mindfulness activity. Hi, I'm Erin Silcox with TraumaInformedTeachers.com with practical tools for conscientious educators like you. Today I want to talk about how we can use mindfulness as a classroom management tool. It's a great alternative to power struggles, and you should use it to help trauma-affected students to maintain regulation, to stay engaged in the classroom, to avoid power struggles, and to not lose too much instructional time, and keep them in class. We know that when trauma-affected students are sent away from class for any reason, that's just going to be more traumatic for them. So we want to keep them in the room and help them to develop self-regulation strategies. But how do you do it? Stay tuned, keep watching to learn how to incorporate mindfulness as a classroom management tool. All right, so students are going to need to know how mindfulness works, how to do it. They're going to need to have a practice. So if you haven't already, you should head over to my YouTube video called How to Make Mindfulness a Consistent Part of Your School Day in order to learn just how you can develop the practice with and for your students. So if you're already there, keep watching, and I'll explain to you. So by exposing them and teaching them to mindfulness tools every day, you're going to, like I said, you're going to build their stamina, you're going to build their independence, and you're going to be able to use it as a tool for classroom management. Without a practice, without daily instruction, if you will, in mindfulness meditation, they're not necessarily going to have the ability to do it on their own. So you want to make sure that students have the physical objects handy that they might need to practice meditation or mindfulness, whatever the activity is. These physical objects could be an iPod, it could be an iPad, it could be a computer, it could be a CD player with headphones, it could be a rocking chair, it could be a weighted blanket, or a meditation jar. Google that if you're not sure what it is. They're awesome. Get a couple. So, when you have physical items that students need to use for mindfulness activities, make sure that those are really easy to find. Make sure that students put them away after they use them, and that you just keep track of where they are and everybody knows, so they're easy to access. All right, so maybe the most important part of making mindfulness useful as a classroom management tool is to set up your expectations ahead of time. A couple expectations are you want to make sure that students know when it's appropriate, and also what signals they should be paying attention to for when they should be doing mindfulness activity to self-regulate. You're going to want to start at first to help them understand what it feels like to be agitated when they're starting to move in that direction. You might want to develop some nonverbal cues where you can just say, tap on the desk, or have something where you write a note to the student and just say, feel free to go listen to a meditation when you personally see them starting to get agitated or on the brink of maybe shutting down. And over time, they're going to, if you're consistent with that, they're going to start to see those signs on their own and initiate potentially. If not, you might just have to be the person to show students how and when to use it pretty consistently. Or if you have a classroom aide, I would not bring other students into the mix. You don't need students telling each other to go calm down. That would not be good. So how should they ask is another expectation. This is really up to you. Again, it could be in the other direction, a nonverbal cue where they write you a note, or they raise their hand, or they have, they can go grab like a stick or something, or you can just have it set up where they're allowed to just go and do it. That's up to you. Be flexible. Try not to worry about time, especially at first, and constraints, work productivity, other things that are sort of these rigid constructs of the educational system. Realize, especially with your trauma-affected students, that that type of policing is really counterproductive, and you want them to feel comfortable and safe using that mindfulness tool. So the next question may seem counterproductive with what I just said, but how long are they allowed to use the activity? You do want to set the expectation ahead of time that a student's not timing out and going and rocking in the rocking chair for the entire class period. You want them to understand that they are developing regulation, and that they're using it as a tool to avoid getting themselves in trouble, or missing class, or missing schoolwork, or missing instructional time. And so you're not setting up like this reward punishment thing, but you do want to make sure that they understand the purpose of it, and that 5 to 8 minutes is typically plenty of time for a student to go from almost getting upset or almost shutting down to ready to re-engage in the class. And you know your students well. You know what's going to set them off or what's going to work for them. So I prefer to have that expectation really clear ahead of time, and then I will set a timer for them and make it visible and make it audible for them. And then what will happen if they misuse the activity? So this might be the most important thing I touch on in terms of the paradigm we want to be building when we're talking about trauma-affected students. What would it look like if somebody were to try to use the activity to get out of work? To be honest, that's fine. Think about it. That student's practicing mindfulness and rewiring their brain. Don't fight that at first. No, I find that these kinds of things sort of work themselves out. But if they break something, if they refuse to join after the timer goes off, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you think through ahead of time what's going to happen. Maybe decide with them what they'll need to do to make up for what happened. But I would avoid at all costs pulling the privilege of using a mindfulness activity if they mess up, because you don't want to make that punitive. You want to make it make sense. So if they break it, they buy it, if you will. They figure out a way to repair whatever they've broken. If they refuse to come back to class when the timer is up, they get to choose next time how much time they think is appropriate. Or they set the timer, or they have a different thing that tells them how much time is left. Maybe you can have like 5 different timers that they could use. Be flexible and make sure that whatever consequence you set up for that misuse is not going to link the mindfulness with punishment in any way, and that it just makes a lot of sense. It's tied to the actual action that the student did. So in conclusion, making mindfulness a tool for classroom management really is all about prevention. It's all about building the skills in the students to develop that self-regulation. So you want to have it be part of your classroom every day if possible, as often as possible. And then you just want to make sure that your expectations are really clear.